It'll figure it shit out.
Should
Are
we
we
take,
live on the YouTube?
Should we take 5 more minutes and just reset my modem now?
How's it been working for you?
Well,
I don't know. It's pretty hit and miss.
Sure, if you want.
I don't know. It should be fine.
All right. This is the bonus YouTube footage.
Always.
Oh,
I think we'll just always make YouTube bonus.
yet.
Yet. See,
Yet.
that's the optimist. in you.
Always. World of Grey podcast is live now. Why do we not see anything? It says we're live, but I don't see anything.
It's a great question.
I hear things. The things that I hear are the things that coming out of my mouth. And is this Facebook? World of Live? World of Grey Live?
World of Live.
World of Live.
I'm just going to end that.
All right.
I don't know why it's doing that. To be perfectly honest.
Let's delete that video.
Correct. Oh, no.
I see all that shit again. We need a producer.
Very badly. It will happen.
Just don't know if it's the internet or it's just my computer being slow.
YouTube is having unbelievably compelling content streamed on.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I would just skip like 5 minutes ahead. I'm sure.
5 minutes? Okay.
That's my guess.
I think it's going to be less than 5 minutes. I think if you skip 5 minutes ahead, we'll be into it already. So if
Then go back.
if that's the case. And you'll find the sweet spot.
People want information they really have to earn. You know?
Yeah.
You're gonna feel like
They got to dig
earned-
deep.
Yeah,
You got to dig deep. All right, let's go live.
that's a great idea.
Okay. Accessing your time to go live on the Facebook Live. Yeah.
That's not one word.
Nope. Or a hashtag.
No, that's the problem. I've been doing so many hashtags.
I have a hockey card of myself as an LA King. It really, really is. And Luke Robitaille is my friend. Says so on his jersey.
So just as much as Dane is my friend.
Probably a little bit less because we didn't share beers. We shared an amazing 5-minute conversation, but yeah, no, Dane's your friend.
Sure.
Absolutely, he's your friend. He would say it.
In my mind,
No, he would say it.
he's such a cool dude.
He's such a cool dude. I'm going to an event where he will be at on July the 2nd.
That's amazing. All
That's
right.
amazing. Or maybe July 1st. I'm not sure. 3, 2, 1. 1.
And
2.
we're live,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the World of Grey podcast. In a society divided by black and white arguments, we are here to discuss
The
the
world of
Grey.
Grey.
I almost said describe.
I'll describe
That
the world of
works.
Grey.
We can describe the world of Grey.
I'll do
So, yeah, we're late. Shush. We had a few
let's
technical
shush that.
difficulties. You just really don't want people to see your beautiful face, do you?
Whoa, hold on.
Mike Chisholm has joined
Share.
us both in the virtual world and the physical. So as we share these videos, oh, my mom just texted me. It's right now. See?
It's right now. Okay, I'm putting it up on the Facebook because we're talking about the Rutland neighborhood thing, right?
Yeah, so we're talking about the new supportive housing that's coming up in Rutland, and this has been an extremely hot topic since we've started promoting it.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people want to discuss this. I'm hoping everyone that has talked about wanting to discuss this joins us here live.
Yes.
I mean, I'm hoping us being a tiny bit late isn't going to.
Yeah, we're sorry. We had
affect this
technical
too much.
difficulties, which, should be the title of our podcast. Hey, sorry, we had technical difficulties.
Yeah, you get what you pay for, really. And we ain't paying for anything.
And you ain't paying for anything, and no one's paying for anything, and we're just doing our thing talking.
Yeah, so this is another one of those podcasts for the World of Grey that when I did some research, it started to hurt my brain. So it wasn't as bad as, was it Indoctrination? Which one really broke me?
Indoctrination broke
I think
you.
it was Indoctrination.
Yeah.
My
My cousin Rhonda just joined us.
Alex Draper has joined us.
Yeah.
Now,
He can talk about Rutland.
did you do the watch party?
I did a watch party. I got a watch party going. My cousin Rhonda's watching.
Watch party.
She was at
watch
Corey Hart last
party.
night too. Corey Hart put on one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. He was so positive. He connected with the audience in ways I've rarely seen an artist connect. It was an unbelievable show and capping off a pretty crazy weekend for the Chisholms, man. Holy cow.
Is it bad that I don't know who that is?
Corey Hart?
Yeah.
He sang a song called I Wear My Sunglasses at Night.
I wear my
You know who Corey Hart is. There it is.
sunglasses at night.
Now we're going to get
so
kicked off
I
Facebook.
can- So I can.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I think people have to watch
Oh,
your show for
before they
Facebook
can kick
to
us off for singing someone
actually
else's
kick
song.
you off.
He sang that song second to last night, and it was incredible. Yeah, it was an absolutely mind-bending show. Whether you liked Corey Hart or didn't, there were people who were not even born when his music started coming out, and they had a fantastic time. So
We are also on the YouTube. If you prefer getting your information off the YouTube,
and having a slightly darker image than on Facebook.
I also like to say the YouTube.
the YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know why that's slightly dark.
Oh, it's okay.
Darker. Are we
All right.
flipped too, or is that just me?
Yeah, no,
We
we're
are
flipped.
too. We're flipped on the
So
YouTube.
if you want me on the other side of Colin, watch YouTube.
If-
If you want me on this side of Colin, stay right here.
if you're all about getting a different perspective on things
Mhm.
and perception, that's how we do it. So we both been pretty busy as of late.
Yes.
We've been doing a lot of little projects. You went to the NFL, the NHL draft.
Alex
in
Draper said I wear my mom's glasses at night. I did. I went to the NHL draft as a media for the Upper Deck
Amazing.
hockey card company. I had a media pass, and we did interviews with all sorts of people, including a bunch of LA Kings alumni and officials. And I got made an LA King, and I got made an honorary Los Angeles King. So now whenever I say we won last night, I actually have legitimacy to say it, and I have a hockey card to prove it. In fact, I've got a hockey card with me as a Los Angeles King, hung out with the Stanley Cup, had an absolutely phenomenal time, and then we went and saw Corey Hart last night.
So we have 7 people joining us now. So this is definitely a hot topic. We're talking about the supportive housing in Rutland.
Yes.
I'm going to give a couple minutes just for people to write some comments if you have it. So whatever opinion you have about this new development on McCurdy Road, it's a supportive housing unit that's going up extremely close to the Sikh temple and the schools, which is a
Yes.
big concern.
Yes.
I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes to kind of get those opinions up. Then I'm going to start with how I want to frame this podcast. So I'm going to talk about kind of external feelings and internal feelings, and then we're going to go into a little bit of research. As an extra little preface here, I'm pretty, I don't want to say neutral on this topic, but
You could go either way.
I'm definitely in the world of gray on this one.
Mhm.
I understand some legitimate concerns. I also believe there are some myths going on when it comes to the supportive housing. And there's also just things that I don't quite know or understand about this project as well. So I
So
believe
you're extremely organized today. That's the first thing I want to say. Is
Oh,
that
thank you.
Unbelievable.
I have 2 notebooks going.
Yeah,
on
you
here.
know, so 5 points for organization. The other thing too is that you could go either way on this situation, like so many other things in your life. Yeah, there you go.
Cougar meat.
Yeah, cougar meat. There you go. No, so this is a really important topic to me, because at the end of the day, what happens here is that you've got a development that's happening that is creating awareness, and that is to me always a good thing. People are actually looking at what is going on in their neighborhood. Now, some people are looking at it really intently, and they're actually getting the information and finding out. Others are basing their awareness on rumor and innuendo. And
just not quite understanding the facts. right?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, and so I hope that today what we can do is have an intelligent discourse that lays out both sides of the issue, and we can take it from there. We should ban raves.
This is an aside. I wanted to see. I don't want to. I'll talk about it later.
Okay.
It's an experiment
Okay. Well, that sounds
that I'm
good.
doing on Facebook.
All right. That sounds good. So anyway,
so before I get to the framing, I'm trying to organize this in my head and decide if I want to do the source. We did a poll. It's a simple yes or no poll of whether or not people think that this development should go up. And we got a lot of responses, especially for a tiny little local podcast that makes no money and has very little views. we had like 160 people vote on
Yeah, this is
this.
a hot wire issue for people.
Which is the reason why I put extra research into this.
So let's talk
um,
about what it is then, because I mean, if people are going to come on board here and they're gonna
Yeah.
watch, and we've had 160 people talk about this.
Yeah.
So at the corner of Rutland Road
Mhm.
and McCurdy Road, for years and years and years and years and years, there was the Knights of Columbus Hall.
Yeah.
Did you ever do anything in the Knights of Columbus Hall when it was up?
Never.
I did. I did quite a few things there.
All right.
Everything from some bands played, and we had like a HeroClix tournament and some nerd things go on there. But yeah, so that recently was torn down after I forget how many years, and it was announced that a support housing facility
Supportive housing unit. Yeah.
was going to be built. And
Yeah.
how many units are inside of it?
49, I
So
believe.
49. There's going to be 49 residents if they're at maximum capacity, which they're going to be.
Yeah.
49 residents who are who are these people
So
that will be in this place?
so it's low income housing.
Okay.
It's a range, right? So there's going to be individuals that may or may have not been formerly homeless.
Okay.
It's also going to have quite a large demographic of young adults in it.
Okay.
So 19 to 25, I
Single
believe.
or families?
I'm not 100% sure if they have specified. Yeah, that's yours.
Thank you.
I believe it would be anyone. So the rent is quite low. It's under $500 a month. So this is one thing we can get into is this isn't 100% subsidized free housing. So this is not a homeless shelter,
Okay.
to be clear.
Okay.
So there is, before we kind of get into the rest of this framing,
Do some people think it is a homeless shelter?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. And
because
so
of the In From the Cold program that's associated with it by the city? Like, is that
possibly,
why?
I
Okay.
think just when we get into the arguments of whether or not supportive housing should exist in certain areas, from the other research I've done in other places around the world where this has been an issue,
Right.
this is where a lot of the confusion comes in. And I think it's really important to make clear the differences between these two, right?
Okay.
So this is housing where individuals will pay rent. I'm not 100% sure on this one specifically, but when these units exist, there is, and I'm assuming will be, but I mean, you should never assume things, an assessment process for each resident coming in.
Okay.
So we'll get to the poll in a second. Let's just get a little bit of framing out of the way.
Mhm.
So here are the main concerns that I've heard, not only from people texting me and calling me, but just comments on Facebook
Mhm.
and interviews that were done with Kelowna Now and other
Mhm.
news outlets. Okay.
Mhm.
So I've broken this into what I call external and internal. External being what people are saying, internal being my perception of how this is translated into our subconscious fears
Okay.
or whatever, right?
Okay.
So safety
Yes.
clearly is an issue. So this
What do you think
housing-
the safety issue is?
well, I got
It's okay.
points here.
Okay.
So a few of the safety issues people are bringing up. One is the housing is extremely close to the schools.
Yep.
And I'm not going to delegitimize or legitimize any of these concerns at
No.
this current
This is
time.
what the concerns are.
And I'm not saying I disagree or agree with any or all. So the housing is too close to schools. Criminals being in the housing.
Yep.
So honestly, I don't know what the ratio is here when it comes to how, like, what are there criminals being put into these housing or not? I don't have that information or
Right.
that data. I couldn't find it.
Right.
But that's a concern, is that there's going to be former criminals or criminals in the housing.
Okay.
Drug use.
Mhm.
So this is a big one that I do want to get into. And if anyone knows more on this, this is where my lapse in knowledge comes in. But it was presented as a dry house originally, and
Okay.
it's now it has been changed to it will be a wet facility, meaning they will allow drugs and alcohol into it,
Mhm.
which I don't understand, because these are staffed facilities,
Yes.
and I'm not 100% sure what that means.
Okay.
Because this I discovered today when I was doing further research.
Okay.
And I didn't realize, I know people had said it, but I wasn't sure if it was true, because you do have to be really careful when people just say things.
So
Because
yeah,
there's a lot of disinformation that I have read about these facilities that just isn't true. And people tend to conflate arguments by saying things that are true and then throwing their opinions in as fact, which
Sure.
we are going to debunk a little bit as we go through.
and by wet facility, I mean, we should probably find out definitions as to, is this a place where people are just allowed to live and they can go and they can kick back with a beer at the end of the day, therefore it has to be a wet facility? Or is it something a little more nefarious of that, is, hey, yeah, we're going to have people who are heroin addicts who are drying out in this facility, but we're going to allow them to dry out in the facility. So those both could fall under the definition of a wet facility.
Yeah.
But there could also be other rules that people just don't necessarily know about. They just hear wet and they think, oh man, okay, here we go.
Yeah, and this is where, like I said, my lapse and not. So are there regulations? Like, is this a place for someone who is detoxing to go? But are there rules for if they relapse, or how many times, or just maybe if they're just disruptive, or
Right.
I'm not sure what that means. I'm
Right.
not sure how they're regulating that.
Yep.
The other concern that I'm hearing is just the sheer volume of supportive housing that's in the Rutland area.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are saying that Rutland's being used as a, quote, dumping ground for the homeless. Okay.
Mhm.
Again, this is where these conflated arguments come in, because when you say that, it sounds like we're again confusing it with a homeless shelter.
Right, which it's not.
Which it is not.
It's not a shelter.
However, I understand the concern as Rutland being cherry picked as like the lower end of town, and we're literally broadcasting this from my house in Rutland. So I just want to preface that.
Hey, born and raised.
Yeah, born and raised
Rutland
in
Voodoo,
Rutland.
94.
I'm 100%
Yeah.
a Rutland boy.
I don't even know what a voodoo is, but I was one.
But that's the concern. Is just the sheer so
Yeah.
Rutland becoming a dumping ground and being just, we'll just put it all in Rutland.
Yeah.
Another one is
By the way, can I just say something
Yep.
to that?
yeah, you
there-
can say,
The one thing I love about low income housing in Canada, compared to say low income housing in other developed nations, is many times you don't even realize it is low income housing. I've gone to complexes and townhouse complexes over the years to visit friends throughout the city, by the park in that area, and realized afterwards, holy cow, they're not making enough money that
they
the
need
Kelowna-
support.
The Kelowna rent, market demands.
Yeah.
And they get support for that, and they have facilities, and there are to be able to afford that privilege. And at the end of the day, we need more of that in this city, I think.
Yeah, and I think
Proportionally
again,
for our population.
this is where people get stuck on a very narrow argument. Is yes, some of the people that are living in these supportive houses will be drug addicts, possibly have done time. I don't know what the regulations are on that.
Mhm.
However, a lot of people donating wages and
Yeah.
the cost of living raising higher and higher. I know this. I work for a not-for-profit.
Well, we're seeing it in Kelowna. We live in Kelowna.
We're seeing
my goodness.
Yes, a lot of people that come through the doors, even our own staff, struggle with the cost of living rising and wages not being able to catch up. And whether that's the fault of the organization or not, that's irrelevant,
Mhm.
right? The cost of living goes up while wages stay. And at a certain point, so then now we're just and a lot of times it's the younger people that get pushed out. And if we want a thriving tech sector, we can't be pushing younger people out of the city.
No.
So that's one opinion of mine that I have. The other external concern that I've been hearing is property values.
Right.
So a lot of people are concerned that if the supportive housing goes up, that their property values are going to drop.
And why would that be the case? Why is that founded?
Because people. But I think the perception is that if you're trying to sell your house and other people are looking to buy, they're going to know there's a supportive housing around it.
So the stigma.
And yeah, I guess the stigma, and
Okay.
they won't purchase that house.
Okay, and I think also the other fear might be, and I'm just explicating here because it's not a fear of mine. I've lived close to supportive housing places before, and I mean the property value in Kelowna has always been that case for me. It's never been affected. One of these places is going to be here. Crime is going to go up.
Yeah, so that's one of the
without
other
necessarily knowing any of the stats
concerns. Yeah. And then the other one is that it's a family area, right? But to your point, a lot of times you don't even know these places are low income. There's one on Tut Street that's right by Hector's Casa that I used. No, it's behind it.
Shout out to Tut Street.
But when it first went up, I had no idea, and I've
Yeah.
never seen any issues there when I lived right by it.
Yeah.
So the other framing here is just I always, when people have concerns or arguments, I always think, where do those come from? Where are those arguments founded within us, right?
Yes.
So this is what I've called the internal. So the safety issues are probably the most legitimate because we all want our families to be safe.
The safety concerns.
The
that
safety
people have.
concerns.
Absolutely.
We
You want
all-
to address those, and you want to get facts out that people will either accept or not accept. But the safety part is the part where we
most understandable for an individual because
100%.
instinctually we want ourselves to be physically safe. And if we are concerned about our physical safety becoming an issue, then obviously we're going to voice our opinions on it. And then obviously we want our families to be safe. I always say, I don't care what you say to me, but you don't mess with my family or friends. And so as someone who is instinctually defensive of any harm coming upon his family, I totally understand it. Protecting your tribe, right?
Yes.
So this isn't just necessarily your family, but also everyone around you.
Yes.
So this is our community, this is ours, and this is threatening our status quo, standard of living, or our way of life.
Yep.
And I'm going to fight back against it. And sometimes the facts don't filter in properly because it doesn't really matter what you say at this point. I'm pushing back against this because it goes against my tribe.
Right.
Also, this is more of this might be more of some individuals are raised to believe that low income individuals automatically means you're like a loser in society or a drug addict or a criminal, and that you're only low income because you've done nothing but make bad choices.
Yes.
And it's all the fault of the individual and none of the system.
Right.
Right. And this is something I'm quite passionate about because, and that's a whole other podcast, but I just feel like that something that's kind of built into us at a young age plays a role when we go through some of the thought processes here.
Absolutely. Now I want to go back to the to the fear thing and what's founded, what's unfounded. You know, we live in a city where this is like, okay, whether you like or do not like this development, I think it's safe to agree that people here in Kelowna is getting bigger and bigger. There are growing pains that are coming with that. And there have been people who have things. You go downtown. Like I was downtown last weekend for Father's Day with my parents, and we walked down Leon, right from the park across, and we walked down 2 or 3 blocks. And for me, I've always felt safe down there, even despite the surroundings that are there. There's a lot of homeless people there at the Gospel Mission and around that area. Do I know there's stuff going on? Of course there's stuff going on. Of course there is. But I've always been the type that have kept to myself, and so I've never really been negatively affected by it. Other than, and people walk across it. My mom was like, oh, something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. Okay. Yeah. Now we've also live in a place where take the homeless part out of it and go back to your point of saying, okay, you know what? Average house in Kelowna now is $600,000 for a decent sized house with a decent sized piece of land. Where does that leave? I remember when I was in grade 12, Mr. Fisher, very, very awesome influence in both of our lives.
Yep.
I remember him saying in one of our English classes, hey guys, enjoy this. You're going to be the last generation of single homeowners in this valley. It is not an easy thing to do. And people are throwing up their hands saying, what can be done? And so I applaud the fact that we have a government who is trying to do something about these things. The in from the cold initiative, and you've got there's all sorts of initiatives that are happening. I shouldn't just throw in that one because this is a much more complex issue than just one or two things. We actually do have a government that's trying to address these issues. There's a lot of rental income that has where the old KSS school is.
Yeah.
The city basically spearheaded that to try and get to densify. And I think they're trying to do a good job in doing that. Now, the execution on this one here in particular, probably on the awareness side, probably needs a little bit of work. So I'm glad that we're doing this today and excited about that. So we don't want to come across as disrespectful, just throwing rocks at anybody who's trying to come up with a solution. Anytime someone tries to come up with a solution, that is a good thing, and we applaud that.
So 2 points to what you were just talking about while researching, but
Sure.
there's a bit of a hypocrisy here from people that are opposing this development, because if you oppose this development but you're a naturally empathetic person, you have probably thought or said at one time, oh well, our local government needs to step in and do something about the homeless problem.
Right.
And when they do it, oh, but not where I live. Don't put it where I live. I want you to do something about it, but I don't want it to affect my life.
Point, like, we're empathetic to a point, but as
Yeah.
soon as fear comes in, that
Yes.
fear just stops those pathways, and
So-
the empathy kind of stops at that point. Or do you think that can be kind of remedied?
I think empathy is like a wave, right? Like it comes and goes depending on a situation. But
Okay.
I believe fear always trumps empathy. This is why when it comes to demagoguing, that fear is always a harder driver than hope or empathy, or trying to make change in that way. If you could just instill fear, our bodies are always going to go to survival first. I've said this before. I'm the most altruistic person in the world,
Right.
but if somebody has a gun or a knife and they're trying to kill me and my only option is to get them first,
Yep.
I'm instinctually going to do that. And that's
Sure.
a morbid example.
It's the
really
reptilian
morbid.
brain. The reptilian
The
brain.
reptilian
kicking in
brain,
the fight or flight.
And
right?
that's evolution. We've
Okay.
had to grow above that to get empathy and to feel empathy.
right.
And I think that, yeah, I do agree. My other point to that is we are not just talking about individuals that are kind of like on the fence or do want to see something. We're just talking about the people, like at this point in time in this argument, we're just talking about the people that are only going as far as, oh, not in my house, not right.
Right.
So obviously this is a complex issue and we're going to try to navigate this. I didn't explain it the best I want to, but we're going to try to navigate through this. So again, this is meant to be a forum, a discussion, forum,
Yeah.
and a discussion. And even if you get a little feisty, we'll pick and choose people to get involved, because we can't sit back and be keyboard warriors and just comment on things
Yeah.
after the fact.
That's not what the
This
World of Grey
is-
is about.
This is a discussion that we can have live. And if you're watching this after, that's great.
Oh
They're
yeah,
still
comment
gonna
after. We'll keep it going.
comment after. And if you don't feel comfortable, like you don't feel forced.
Okay,
but I
this
do
is
want
something. This is
people
something I thought
to
about
comment.
while I was in Vancouver for the draft. I was thinking about this podcast a lot, knowing I was coming back to do this today, and part of me was thinking, what I think that are not brave enough to not. I shouldn't say not brave enough. The fear of being attacked for throwing out there how they feel might be big enough, so big that they're not compelled to actually take part. Hey, this is a no judgment zone. So, as from the point of us anyway, this is a no judgment zone, and we would like it to be a no judgment zone from everybody who's commenting and going back and forth on things.
Yeah, we've had people come in on this podcast that we don't necessarily back our points if we feel it's necessary.
100%.
So let's kind of there's my framing. Let's go through this a little bit.
Okay.
So I do want to but get back to the housing being close to schools. I think this is a very legitimate concern.
Okay.
Also, the criminals in the housing. I'm just going through the framing here. I don't really know a lot about. Same with the drug use. But let's talk about crime rates. So a lot of people, we'll talk crime. I have a couple studies here, and I'm not sure what order they're in. So we'll just kind of go as I see them here. So most supportive housing focuses on special needs population, some being formerly homeless, but this is not a homeless shelter. So I just want to keep reiterating this as we go.
Alex just asked, "Are there wet shelters in the mission?" Well, this isn't a shelter.
But wet supportive housing.
Wet
he's
supportive
asking.
housing.
And I'm not sure.
That could just mean that you're allowed to come in and have a beer at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like I said, we're not exactly sure projects specifically.
Yes.
Let us know and leave comments. But
there is low income housing in the mission, to answer that question.
There is low income supportive housing in the mission, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I think this is where a bit of the fallacy thinking that Rutland's getting all of it.
Yep.
And I think there's some supportive housing in Rutland that really no one's even. There's a supportive housing unit in Rutland that was right beside the townhouse I lived at when I was a kid, and my buddy Jordan lived there. And like rougher around the edges. And we had, an altercation or two, so that's a concern. But
I lived up in Black Mountain, in a beautiful neighborhood where there were no multi-unit houses, no apartments, no townhouses or anything like that. It was it was just these big, old schools, 60s and 70s, quarter acre, half acre lots, big lots all around, a couple hundred houses up there. And there were kids where they were rough around the edges there too.
Yeah. And this is a point that needs to be brought up a lot. And Jen said this when we talked about it, tucked away on Bell Road in around very nice houses. It's a good neighborhood, but it doesn't matter where you are. People will seek out crime when they're desperate.
Yep. And
I think it's a bigger issue when it comes to like low income individuals and stagnating wages and right. Like
I think the fear is
other mechanisms.
So let me point this out. There's the residents that are there, but I think the fear is also that this will become a gathering place for unsavory elements.
Right.
I think that's one of the things that people were that fear that based on fact or not. I think that's probably one of the things that it will be like a lightning rod for unsavoriness.
So let's get into a study about crime rates. It's a 1999 study by Urban Institute, which is a think tank that's in Washington. So that's their job, to come up with all of these scenarios and kind of research and go through. So I'm going to read this out. And then if you have any opposing views, please leave them in the comments. So
any views at all, actually.
Any views at all, yeah. So this is on crime rate housing compared to supportive housing, compared to similar areas that had no supportive housing, except for disorderly conduct charges within 500 feet of the facility. However, it did find an increase in total and violent crimes within 500 feet of the supportive housing. So what this means is there was a slight increase in total, and this is like by percentage. It's really hit the radar, right?
Yeah.
Of this, but for total crimes, it does increase around the facility. So there's a legitimate concern. And so what these are is the types of individuals may be targets of crime from their past, right? Maybe they owe somebody money. Maybe they skipped out on a drug deal. There's the other part of the study was talking about, there's a theory. I didn't write it all down because it starts to go into theories of the think tank, which, I mean, how legitimate can we make that? These properties are actually victims of the crimes and not necessarily the perpetrators of them.
Right.
The other thing you got to realize is these people are being given a helping hand up, and they want to do better. They're seeking this out. They're applying for these spots. They know that these spots are few and far between, and to just assume that they're going to go in there and just start, committing a bunch of crimes, I think is a tad delusional. But
the idea that somebody actually has to put their pound of flesh in. I know people who have been given a bum rap, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a business going belly up, whether it's these are people who have tried to go out and get the brass ring in their area and have come up a little short, and so they fall down for a little while, and they apply for something like this in different areas of the city, like I said, and it is when they get the call saying, yeah, we got something for you, they're kids to live that we can afford and we can get there, and we're not going to have all these other scarcity thoughts in our head going, oh my God, am I going to become homeless? Yes, I have a job, but now I'm only one income. Am I going to become homeless? Yes, I have a job, but just got cut to part-time. Am I going to become homeless? Oh my God, I just lost my job. I'm going on EI. I've never done that before. Am I going to become homeless? And people who are given this opportunity, they're usually, that in my experience, these are people that are very grateful, and they take advantage of the opportunity given to them. And many times I've seen people actually move forward and get back up on their feet again and continue to be productive members of society. These people are still buying groceries, just not buying as many as they used to. It becomes a question. They're still contributing to society.
So one thing you and me need to be aware of is when we make these watch parties, people can comment on here as well as in front of me. So that she says, I would imagine that these affordable housing projects would have specific bylaws that tenants would need to abide by. Which is what we kind of talked about. I mean, and they get assessed, right? So we've talked about this before. And really, when you look at the statistics, there's no significant increase in crime. So if this is one of the main points that you were alluding to and your main concern, you're not going to see this crazy influx. Going to work very closely with the RCMP. If there are any issues, they're easy to voice. She just commented there too because she realized we clearly weren't watching the watch party.
Right on.
So
Shout out to Jay again.
Marty,
tenacity.
Marty Sugar. I don't know how to say your real last name. Marty Sugar has a comment here as Hardy slowly almost falls off my lap. Careful, bud. Kelowna is the third biggest city in BC, and these assisted housing situations are the only way to combat the homelessness issue at this time. It is not fair to only expect downtown to take on the entire burden. Every community needs to take on its share of the workload for this to work. 100% agree with that. However, I think a lot of the concern is that Rutland specifically is taking on more of its fair share than other areas in the city. Concern is they would like to see it spread out a little bit more around Kelowna, right? So I don't know what the rationale is for building this building in Rutland. I don't know if it was a zoning issue, if it was a pricing issue.
Can I explicate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to throw out some guesses there. I haven't talked to anybody that I know with the city about this particular issue in this specific nature yet.
Specificity.
Yeah, I can't say it. It's hard. I can't.
Like
I did it.
if
You
you
did
want to
it.
train to be
You're
a
hell of
runner,
trainer. Holy cow.
if you want to train to be a runner, you got to run, right? Like sitting on a bike's not going to prepare you for running.
So if I want to be a
Specificity.
specificity trainer, I got to learn how to say that
You got to
word.
learn
I
how
got
to say
practice it. I gotta
specificity.
practice.
That's true.
Specificity. Man, you're great. So I haven't talked to anybody with any specificity right on in the city about this issue. But my thing is, I know how much they want to densify. I think it's a land issue. They're being built on so many older pieces of property, is because guess what? We're in a valley. We're between mountains and lake, and we're not making any more land. We can't spread out anymore. So we have to take the pieces of land when they come up, opportunities, whether they're schools, whether they're like a Knights of Columbus Hall that's on a fairly big footprint where things can densify. You look down Rutland Road and you see, never mind, this particular development, you look at how many housing parcels have been bought up, demolished. Also happening all downtown. Like there's all sorts of places in the city where we are densifying, and like Marty said, as our city grows, as these things grow up, so too will the services and amenities that need to be that need to make cities great, and that would include this. So if we're densifying, I think it's a land issue.
Well, the other thing too, just to elaborate on this city getting bigger and bigger, and I have some other points that we can get to. One being a point that the mayor made when he was on certain service industry jobs and labor jobs that might not be filled if we don't give a helping hand.
Yes.
Because as Kelowna grows, there's going to be more of a job demand, and we have been in this situation before where we can't match the need for employment.
Yeah.
Right. So when we get there, we want to have individuals that are stable enough to seek out employment, to service all the different
you want to have local staff that are able to get down there properly, and this is where it comes into transit and all that. And I mean, you look at all the bus loops that have been built in the last 10 years compared to what was there before that. It's they're trying to get all of these amenities figured out, and lodging these people, having a place where these people can live and not break the bank is a challenge.
So if you're just joining us, we are discussing the new supportive housing development hot button issue. So if you have any opinions on this, please leave them in the comments. This is the World of Grey podcast. And at this point, we're kind of discussing some of the concerns and fallacies people have. We're talking about crime rate currently. And then now we're just talking about the fact that there is a need for this supportive housing for the formerly homeless or special needs populations. The other thing, like to your point, is we live in a valley, and when we had Kelowna podcast, he was saying that we've expanded out about pretty close to as far as we can expand out. And what the city is really focusing on now is hubs.
Yep.
Rutland, Glenmore, Mission, downtown, creating hubs that have like a lot of services and restaurants and transit that goes to it, and opportunities for young people to seek employment, and really growing those amazing hubs that are all the staples of Kelowna, and building up, because that's really what we need to do now. We talked about studies suggesting that crime rate doesn't significantly increase in areas where these supportive housings are built compared to similar areas. The other concern that we want to talk about is property values.
Sure.
So this is probably I mean, I don't know if we want to go as far as saying selfish, but probably it's one of the main external reasons I've heard from people, which I understand. I mean, as I'm a new homeowner and we bought the market for it to lower anymore, right?
Yeah.
So from an investment point, I understand. It's getting warm in this room.
Yeah, it is. Heat things up here.
So 1 second.
Gray.
Discuss.
So yeah, like, okay, so you live in Rutland, and here's the thing I'm pointing back to. I've got clients in Rutland, and with the nature of my business, you know, I see when I do financial plans for people, I see what their property values are worth and whatnot. And I've got clients in Rutland, and a few years ago, just down where on Rutland, right across from.
Still go to
That was a Tasty
Burger Barn.
Freeze.
My mom
It's a
used to
Burger
work at
Barn
the
now.
Tasty. I think
It was a Tasty.
I could be
Freeze.
wrong.
Anyway, right across the street from the Tasty Freeze, there is is it the John Howard Society?
I believe so.
I think
yeah.
it's a John Howard building that's there.
Tyler Snodgrass has joined us.
Yo, T Snod.
RSS.
And
Sup?
so right across the street, and I mean, that building went up, and I don't know how many units there are in there, but that is a unit that helps people kind of
I think
reintegrate back into society.
It's
correct?
either 49. Not heard. See, on that point, very similar area. Not heard one complaint
Me
about
neither.
that since it's been up. I
Me
don't know
neither.
if there was opposition before.
Yeah.
This is also a common trend.
There's a Starbucks right there. Are people concerned about that? And by the way, just as close to a school
Hi,
as
Candace.
the other places.
She's on my watch party, not
Who
yours.
Candace? My Candace?
Your Candace.
What
On Cutler's watch.
Oh,
you
no.
son of a-
Hold on. Is it? Come on, trying to reconnect. Broadcast interrupt. It says broadcast interrupt on mine. Oh, is it back? Come on.
Oh, not good. Oh,
Due to poor video connection. Well, hold on. It's coming back though on mine. It's available.
I don't know if we're back or not. It looks like it.
Oh man. Hey. Peace, love. Peace, love. I'm waiting for the peace, love to show up in my other one here.
It looks like it is still working. So we're just going to keep rolling with this.
There's the wave. Here's the peace, love.
All right. Okay.
Here's the peace, love.
So it
Okay,
is
sorry.
saying-
It says here that we're not connected, but on the live parties it is. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
That
But
that
keep
break
commenting.
there.
If you're on the watch parties, keep commenting. The comments should still come up. Yeah, they're still coming up here. So it's really just on our screen. It's saying that we're trying to connect. So keep going. We'll have no idea how many people are watching this till after.
Yeah.
But that's totally fine. What were we talking about? That really threw me off.
John Howard.
John Howard. Yeah. So this is a common trend that I was seeing doing all my different research and going through articles and news, like actual videos as well, is in other areas all over the world. A lot of this happens in New York, is when these places are opposed by like opposition, 3 to 5 years later, when they interview the neighbors surrounding these facilities, very few complaints.
Yep.
Extremely, like there was one interview with a guy that said, "Oh, I didn't even realize that was a low-income supportive housing until it was brought up to me." Right?
And I mean, you talk about the regulation of these types of things. They're very closely monitored. You know, when you're in a neighborhood that isn't closely monitored, you know what? There's gonna be domestic situations that happen. There's going to be other unsavory things that happen in these types of places, because we live in a free society and people do what people do. At facilities like this one in particular that we're talking about here, it is monitored very strictly. Very strictly. And one of the things that's monitored is behaviors.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the new development is going to be monitored the way that this John Howard one is, but what I'm saying is that
it looks like it will
when
be.
they're-
It's
when
going
they're
to be monitored by.
monitored.
It's going to be monitored by CMHA, which is the Canadian Mental Health Association, which the YMCA has a relationship with.
Okay.
And for the most part, they're very, very good at managing a lot of stuff. They always give us a direct line to any issues that we have. So my mom has I mean, Jay Palmer, whoever that is. Yeah, my
out to
mom's
Jay.
watching. Shout out to Jay. She has a really good point here. And so she's going through a bit of a situation where she's had to evict 2 tenants back to back. And these are working people that aren't necessarily that qualify for low-income housing. I don't know 100% a con artist. So this is somebody that was said to have like a $60,000
Mhm.
and just snuck her way in, got the keys before her e-transfer went through, and then or it went through, paid her.
Oh,
so
man.
so when we start
A lot of landlord issues in
stigmatizing
Kelowna, yeah.
people because of their passing, oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I mean, it can happen. Any of these situations can happen in any type of facility or anything, right? So
Yep.
crime can stigmatize here.
Absolutely.
We are a
Absolutely.
little.
And if you know of somebody who is a landlord in Kelowna, there's good experiences with that and there's bad experiences with that. If you've had a bad tenant, boy, oh boy, that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. This is one of those things where it's not really going to be bad tenant, good tenant type situation because it is so closely monitored and structured. So that hopefully that helps people. And again, I'm not coming across saying I'm for or against this. People have out there a lot of people, they just fire from the hip and they just say no or yes or doing this research. I think I still need to know even a little bit more before I can say that I unequivocally support or don't support this.
I think if we can do an overarching not accumulation, but if we can do an overarching point of what this podcast is about today, it's that you should look into things before going straight to the outrage.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Because I was
the outrage
actually
never helps.
I was invited, and they are actually today organizing a protest out there with very few people, and they're trying, oh, we need to have this many people. We need to do that. It's okay. Well, but why are you protesting? Like, I'm all for protesting.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Peaceful protesting, but you need to have your true intention with you and your true reasonings, and you need to look into, like, to just say, oh, well, it's going to be a bunch of crime, so that's why I'm opposing it. Well, no, statistically, that doesn't concerned that my concerns aren't being heard.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair. There's town halls for that.
Yes.
Okay, and you can go to those town halls and you can get information. You can message your MLAs. Maybe that's not helping. Maybe you've tried all this and you're still not satisfied. Go out and protest.
Yep.
That's your freedom of speech, right? But I just really encourage people to do just a little bit more research, or just watch this podcast all the way through, and then maybe make a little bit more of an educated decision. Also, if this is glitchy, I apologize. Perfect.
Yeah. No glitches going on here.
And I think what's the word when you just hire like your family? As
nepotism?
As nepotistic as this is, my mom has a really good perspective on this right now, because she's a landlord going through some shit right now. And for her to come on and say, like, listen, we shouldn't be judging a book by its cover, to me holds a lot of weight, because she's a very logical person, a very strong individual.
Yeah, you want to hear some more? Candace Chisholm, low income doesn't equal crime. Maybe that's been said. If so, whomever said that is really smart.
Thank you. I did my research. So let's get to property values, because I have no idea where we're at for time now, because this just keeps saying it's trying to.
You bought at the high end of the market, with John Howard Society being 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
And you bought at the high end of the market, and it was high. Guess what? That facility was there for a long time.
Yeah.
How's your property value looking?
No idea.
No, I'm saying it hasn't.
But yeah, it probably hasn't affected it.
I'm saying it wouldn't have been high. And that's it's not affecting property values in that regard.
Yeah. So there's clearly a lot more mechanisms in place when it comes to property values than whether or not there's a supportive housing unit around.
100%.
So a 2008 study was done by New York University, their Furman Center. I don't know what that means, but that's what they said. That's the site.
After Officer Mark Furman, maybe.
Sure. Is that a joke? Because if that's a joke, I don't get it.
No.
Property values. Some even went up in 5 years, higher than similar properties that are in similar areas that did not have supportive housing units.
I wonder if that has to do with the maintaining of those units and making sure that there was a certain code that things were kept up to.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that it has nothing to actually do with the supportive housing unit, but just trying to prove that if there are other factors that
Right.
If that makes sense, right?
Right.
So if you're doing a mathematical equation of how this property value is raised and you factor in X, Y, and Z, the supportive housing unit is a non-factor. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, and one side note so the other one was that we talked about the crime rates. It had a slight variance to this.
Mhm.
There's no variance, right? Like, oh, well, for X amount of time it went down or whatever. There's just no evidence that this affects property values. Size of the supportive house building or the density of the neighborhood had any impact on these results.
Interesting.
Right? So it doesn't matter how many people and houses were condensed into the area and how giantly ugly this building was had no effect on these results of this study.
Very interesting.
So it's just something to kind of think about. So
yeah.
if you have any comments on any of this stuff that we've talked about so far, please leave it in the comments. If you're private message World of Grey podcast,
Absolutely,
you can
please.
private message
Yeah, let's keep it
Colin
going.
Cutler, Mike Chisholm, or you can just leave some more comments. And I'm sure when we egotistically watch this back to hear our own voices, we'll see the comments and we can comment.
You know what we would love to
back.
is comments are great and opinions are throwing opinions out there, especially when they're respectful and well thought out, are fantastic. You know what else are great? Questions. Questions are great. Throwing out questions that where you explore not just how you're feeling, where you just throw it out there as to how you're feeling, but why you're feeling that way.
Yeah, fix the internet.
Well,
you just fix social media.
Well, I don't know if I can change behaviors, but we can definitely have a template. So at the end of the day, like, okay, I'm enraged about this coming here. I'm enraged about the Knights of Columbus Hall being torn down and this building being put up there. Okay, let's explore why you're enraged.
Yeah, where's your
Like,
data?
And well, it's not just that.
I'm all about the data.
It's funny. It's there is that, but there's also this weird thing that we as humans have when it comes to change. You know, the flea market there when they would put on the bazaar, bingo every once in a while. Okay, all right, that's fine. I go back to there's a I'm not even gonna call them out in case it's an old folks facility that's downtown or near the downtown. And I remember when that facility was built, and I forget how many, I think it's 100 maybe residents in there. A bunch of houses were cleared to put this facility up. Okay. And I remember the neighborhood around to change our views. This is a neighborhood. Why would we have this 4-story building with 100 and whatever units in it? We don't want this. We don't want this. We don't want this. And then it was really funny that it got built anyway because we had to densify and we needed the seniors supportive housing. It was built. It's been built for years. It's going well. And then 4 or 5 blocks down from there, there was an application put in to build 2 or 3 rental apartment buildings. Who went to City Hall to protest the fact that these 2 buildings were being built, mostly because they don't like change. They were an instrument of the change. They were part of the change that happened to that neighborhood. And yet, when the neighborhood wanted to change even more and densify even more, they went and they protested and protested and protested against that. And so some people just don't like change, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I really, really would say to people, we do want to change. Most of us want to change. Most of us think about ourselves next year later, maybe being able to run a marathon or do something, whatever. We love the idea of changing, but where we get stalled is the process of change. The process of change many, many, many times, if not most times, is a change of improvement. And so people who get enraged out of this, yes, there's the data. Yes, there's the logical perspective of things, trying to figure out why. But there's also the, hey, am I just not enjoying the fact that my neighborhood is changing?
Well, we're just emotional beings. And I think there was an article I was reading local of one of the developments that was on Aziz Road or something like that in Kelowna. And one of the opposition members to this project, one of the individuals that lived around there that was saying that it wasn't a good idea, was a former drug addict himself who had utilized supportive housing to pull himself out of poverty, and was saying that he didn't like crime rates were going to go up and violent crimes, and this was putting kids walking down the street at risk, which
he himself is an example of that. And didn't happen.
But to his point, I mean, we know from this one study that within a 500-foot radius, there can be more disorderly conduct that arises from this. So now
Yeah.
I guess one legitimate concern that we do need to discuss is, should this be so close to a school, especially because they're allowing it to be a wet facility. So this is another thing is that right? 1,000 yards from
Right.
any school,
Yeah.
but this doesn't.
Except also a house where they're allowed to drink as much wine as they want, not
Right.
regulated, as much beer as they want, as much hard alcohol as they want.
Mm.
They're allowed to have as much pot as they want.
Yeah.
You can have an entire neighborhood right in front of that school
Yeah.
who is not held to that standard. So that's my question. This is a place where people can go, and at the end of the day, they can enjoy a beer. Because of that,
Yeah.
it has to be calculated as a wet facility. I don't
Yeah.
know that that's necessary.
And-
I believe dry facilities mean
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we need to think about and get more information on. So, poll time.
By the way, Alex Draper, funny comment. High income housing may equal more crime. I like that.
Yeah, because people will go and rob your house. Is that what he's going to say?
No, high income housing is just like, like we don't take into consideration. I don't believe that blue collar and white collar crimes are weighted the same. You can commit a white collar crime that maybe screws over 20 people living in a
yeah.
certain lifestyle, living in a
Yeah.
certain place, or you're somebody that stole 10 bikes,
Yeah.
affecting 10 families
Yeah.
or whatever, and you're treated and looked on differently. So
Well, and
that's an interesting comment
That's
from
very interesting.
from a very interesting man.
Very interesting, because people that are convicted of white collar crimes are going to be living in those nice neighborhoods until they get arrested.
Right.
That's very interesting. I think
Yeah.
that'd be more
If they
like
get arrested.
certain state. Yeah, if they get arrested. So we did a
We're
poll.
doing a poll time.
So the poll, the project, and I said, should this housing project be, should it exist in Rutland? I forget the actual
We should read it.
wording.
We should read the poll.
Oh, no, I gotta go back. So the poll is, should this be developed in Rutland?
There it is. Perfect.
And then I put a link to it. It had 159 votes.
Yep.
It ends in 11 hours, apparently.
Right
I
on.
did not time that properly. I must
Okay.
have put 11
That's okay.
p.m., not a.m.
No, people can now, who have watched it now, can join in if they haven't already.
So aged individuals that voted against this development,
Okay, and how many
and
voted
only
for?
17 that voted for.
Wow.
And it's interesting because actually my nephew, who's pretty politically charged and actually is a fan of Trump,
Okay.
actually shows the complexity of his thought process, because he is all for the supportive housing. So he's also altruistic, thinks people should be taken care of, but is a Trump supporter, which is interesting. So yeah, and I'm not going to read out who said no to it,
course not.
because that's a little, and a lot of the people that said no to this, and again, like, I don't know
Mhm.
if this should exist or not. I know we need a solution for homeless. Is this the right place to have it? And I guarantee you, like 60% or more of the individuals that said no are mainly concerned about the safety of children.
Here's a question: will children be living in this facility?
Youth will be living in the facility.
Do those youth have to go to school?
I don't know.
Know the
19
answers.
It's 19 to 24.
19 to 24.
And I
What
don't
that-
know if
what if that
young
24-year-old
children.
has a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old?
I don't know if that's a qualification.
I don't know
It
either.
might not be. Maybe there aren't going to be kids in this. But yeah, that's a great point. If children are going to be living in this facility, then they have to make sure it's safe for the ones living in there. But I do understand within, like, around the facility, the concern, very uncomfortable interactions between children and former drug addicts or criminals or whatever. So I guess just the proximity of the school is definitely something that's a concern. Mom's home and the dogs are losing it. What?
She wants to know if we're almost done.
Yeah, we're almost done. Do you need something?
They're
Who's
coming in here, man.
Oh, come on in. Jen Roy and I'm assuming Paul. Oh, is Mama Roy? Oh, Mama Roy. The Roys are here.
The dogs. Supportive housing we're looking for is a
Mama Roy,
podcast
no.
house. We're looking for a studio. So we're gonna have a GoFundMe about. No, I'm kidding. We're not gonna do a GoFundMe, but it's a complex issue. It's
Yeah,
a totally complex.
maybe we'll start
issue.
to wrap this up now, because
Yeah,
we
we
have no
probably
long
should,
how
yeah.
long we've been going for. So I mean, some of the
Not
myths.
opposed to talking about this again, by the way. If this sparks on
Yeah.
something else, and we want to do a another sub podcast where we have a meeting time and place, and people want to just say, okay, let's do this again,
We take
to the
we're going to
streets?
take to the streets. I
like
think.
with rocks.
No, I just meant interviewing people.
Oh, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we were seeing an uprising here.
Yeah, the mutiny. No, that's into a different plan.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
later.
That's
We're
that's
still
right.
working on that. The
Yeah.
uprising, the World of Grey uprising.
Yeah, it'll happen.
I wasn't in frame.
No.
What we've been trying to say this one is a very complex issue, and I think some of the main external fears that are being mentioned, I was gonna say mongered, but let's not go that far, that are being portrayed out there. We've done.
Definitely.
Ooh, someone did research. My mom can be our Jamie. A wet house is defined. Wet houses are popping up in a select numbers. Okay, sorry. It wasn't a definition at first. These residential facilities cater to the chronically alcoholic and homeless population. While there, they can eat, sleep, and drink as much as they want.
Okay.
Interesting.
Sleeping with as much as they want. That's all good. The drinking part, yeah. I mean, they're allowed to drink there. So, I don't think that's a deal breaker for me.
I
to be
think
perfectly
though,
frank.
within the facility, there's support for these alcoholics, right?
Yeah.
So the staff there are there to get you sober, to get you acclimated back into society, and to be a contributing member of society. So
Sure, I think people are fearing that it's a needle exchange.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I think yeah, okay.
I think that's.
Sure.
By the way,
100%.
anytime that I throw something out there and I can be proven wrong with fact, I am a guy who is able to say, "Oh yeah, okay, thank you very much for that."
Yeah, and like my mom's saying here, we can have these issues anywhere
in any neighborhood. Yeah.
in any neighborhood.
Yes, unmonitored, no one looking over.
And I mean,
I've seen it happen. I've heard my neighbors.
And to be
sometimes.
fair, you're looking at two people loving altruistic kumbaya, let's take care of the world,
Yeah.
utopian. We want this to be a positive for the community and not a negative. But I understand the concerns,
Yeah.
especially the concerns of a wet house being around a school.
Yep.
So how do we address that? Who do we talk to? I think these town halls are important. I think doing your own research is important.
Also, 2 years ago, when the project was laid out and being put out there, we probably should have been talking about it back then rather than when we're moving forward with things. The timing of these things, this is where people need to show up. And we need to, as a society, need to show up as things are happening real time so we can contribute rather than react.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great point. So just a couple other little quick facts that I'm going to throw out there is supportive housing and shelters do tend to be a trend that's more common, where they're more commonly placed unproportionately in poor areas. So that is a concern. So yes, there may be some biases from local governments to push them into already lower places, maybe for tourism. I don't know. That's speculation.
Environmental racism.
Yep. It is also extremely common to see protests against these houses. In a lot of US cases, there's actually lawsuits being held against the city. And like I said, 5 years later, there are very few problems. So your outrage is common and it's natural. And I don't blame anyone for feeling this way. I do encourage the 142 people that voted no on this poll to leave some comments with as to why in support of this housing. And I really would like the other perspective here, because that's what the World of Grey is all about.
Yeah.
And no judgment.
No.
And then from my point of view, this is what I always call the expansion contraction trend. So outrage, and then it'll settle. I'm not saying that when it settles, there aren't going to be real concerns, but we're always going to be the loudest when this is first becoming an issue.
Sure.
And I've talked about my hypocrisy a little bit on this. So just to be clear, CMHA will oversee the Safe in Rutland Facebook group. I wrote that it was a little dishonest in the description. Maybe not so dishonest, but a tad bit one-sided. And I don't know when the group was created, but I think this is important for people to be aware of when it comes to like joining a side and having this outrage. Is part of the description and corrects all zonings and bylaws. This was rezoned 2 years ago.
Yeah,
so as far as I know, it wouldn't go through city council if it was in breach of anything. This is what we have laws.
So I just want to be encouraging to groups like that. Like when you say something like that, you can really set off a lot of fire alarms. and it's probably not a good idea to throw out there things like that. You know, even saying something like, we are concerned about the zoning of this.
Yeah.
We're concerned about
Even just
the solution.
yeah.
Well, I mean, some people want to fight just for the sake of fighting.
And even the name Safe in Rutland, we just show that when it comes to these studies, that crime rates do not significantly increase. I mean, again, though, I'll say within the 500 feet, there are some slight increases in volume. So, I mean, if that's your concern, if that concerns you enough to create an entire group called Safe in Rutland, I mean, all the power to you. It's freedom of speech.
Maybe they should change the name to I'm totally joking, by the way. I'm being facetious. I'm not trying to mock anybody. I'm just throwing it out there.
Concerned in Rutland?
Concerned in Rutland. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, before we just feed into nothing but the outrage, let's look at both sides. Jade Roberts, too bad you're late on this one, because we would have loved to have heard your perspective on this.
Jade's gonna go back and listen, though. Jade's one of our most dedicated listeners, and we appreciate that, or watchers. We appreciate that. You know, we got a lot of cool things going on. Colin and I are working feverishly on the next season of Now Kelowna. Now we've got 3 in the can. We've got another one coming tomorrow where they're going to drop it all in one season, just like Netflix does. We've had Big Brother winner Dane Rupert on. Gypsy J
he texted me back.
Was on. Absolutely, he's your friend, Dane Rupert. You know, Big Brother winner and Colin's friend, Dane Rupert. The amazing Alex Draper has been on. We've got a couple other guests who are up our sleeves. Some filmmakers, some international comic book artists. Some I shouldn't say some, one of each. And some other. We're going to be dropping those. They'll be on iTunes coming very soon.
And Kelowna Now.
And Kelowna Now, of course, on the Kelowna Now site as well. So we'll be dropping that very soon. We just appreciate everybody's support as we have grown through this this process of becoming better broadcasters. Jade, you've been there from the beginning, so thank you for that. We appreciate all the shares that have been going out there for the World of Grey, and we just want to build this community, and we want to be there with you guys. So,
and we really want to see all perspectives. Jade Roberts actually has a lot of different opinions than I do, and this.
And just get the points across and be heard.
And like Mike was saying, we really appreciate any involvement when it comes to this site. We're kind of stumbling along the path of figuring out what we want when it comes to the framing of these podcasts. We still, are having technical issues. This is 100% out of our own pockets. We receive 0 revenue, obviously, from our 100 some odd views. So we're constantly trying to improve. If you want to hear more and you want to know when we go live, you can follow us on YouTube, World of Grey YouTube channel, or just like this page. Follow this page and you can get notifications for when we go live. So for myself, Kelowna's Cougar Meat Kid Colin Cutler.
I'm the Flow, Mike Chisholm.
And in a world divided by black and white arguments, we are here to discuss the world of Grey. Peace. Love.
Later, yo.
I did like a gun.
That's when you. Oh, it's like a love
song. I love you.